I'm sitting here after 2 years, still not knowing what the hell to say in these intros. And what's funny about doing the first episode of a new season is that it's supposed to be the start of something new, but all I can do is sit here and reflect on all the things that I didn't talk about for the 6 or 7 months that I wasn't doing the podcast. And that puts me in a weird place. So, long story short, lots of changes, as you do, in my life. Lots of massive relationship changes with myself and others. And I'm just thankful to be here, taking a day at a time, and still have that nagging question of, am I the same pretty much each day? And I've definitely changed since April, for sure. I've changed, but it's hard to point out exactly how. I just know that I feel better and worse, but overall better, if that makes sense. Still have a lot of shit going on, always. Still get hit with bad moments, but I think my understanding and my peacemaking with trouble is getting better by the day. A lot of that I can attribute to meditation, which I've talked about for some time, but didn't really get into practicing, and I've been doing that almost daily, which I just feel silly for not having taken advantage of that before, because I just stopping to not think is so important, because my life is just consistently plagued with my brain saying, are you meaning the words that you're saying as you're saying them, and do you think they'll stand the test of your mind and others and time and what have you. So, and I'm trying to let that go and really know intimately the moment. And I say that all the time, and I repeat myself all the time, but I think I'm on to something. I always feel like I'm on to something, and that's what keeps me talking, I guess. And that can get tiresome. Sometimes I just get so sick of hearing my voice. And I'm sure I will, since I haven't talked to myself in a microphone for some time. But I've learned a lot, man. Taken a lot of time for myself, and that's just made me be better to others. Helped my friendships by helping myself. Been reading more, which I've always struggled with, because, God, it's just time consuming to read a book. But yeah, things are good, man. Things are real good. Saw JPEG Mafia last week with some of my best friends, and beat the shit out of each other doing so. And I saw Kanye. That's a beast. I don't know. I don't like the feeling of sitting here and saying I did this. I hope that it just kind of comes out naturally throughout the season. Maybe I tell people, or I bring it up, or maybe each intro will be one thing that I did. So, that sounds like horse. I don't know. I had a full summer. I went to many places. I saw a lot of things, and I tried to be better all along the way, and I think that I'm kind of doing so. That's about it for me for now. I'm still me. I'm still in college. I'm still nonsensical. I'm still inward. But I'm trying more than ever. And I'm ecstatic to say that the first episode of this season is with a crew member of the Breaking Bad sequel, El Camino. Holy shit. The best show of all time. And I got a beautiful chance to talk with Michael Gowen, the supervising art director. And my God, did I learn a lot. I'm so thankful for things like this. And that's all I'm going to continue doing. My goal this season is to question myself less than I have before, but also just as much as before. Maybe in a more helpful way. Rather than just saying, why are you saying that, you goof? Figure out, why are you saying that, you goof? And dig deeper. So yeah, I'm so happy that I got to talk to Michael and I got to hear about what it means to be a contractor and an art director, because I know nothing of these things. And I'm super appreciative to be in a time in my life where I can soak up so much so quickly, and that someone in such a different situation than I is just a phone call away. I'm happy as hell to be alive, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful to have experience. I'm thankful to be experiencing. I hope whoever listens to this is doing well, and that this is fruitful for you, and that you go along with me on this journey of the 3rd year of my podcast, which is nuts, because I know I've had my doubts with it, but overall, I'm really, really happy with what I've done here because of what other people have given to me, and all I can do is keep learning. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you enjoy the rest of the season. I've got guests from a ton of amazing projects: Honey Boy, The Lodge, Monos, The Interpreters, Downton Abbey, the classic 6-series TV show movie sequel. We also got Frankie and The Lighthouse. My God. So yeah, lots of wonderful things in store. And of course, El Camino. My word. So thank you again for listening. And here's my conversation with Michael Gowen. I'm doing wonderful, man. How's your Saturday treating you?
Oh, it's okay. I'm pretty exhausted. We're going to start filming on Monday on the project I'm on right now.
Oh, what is that?
This week it's called For All Mankind. It's I'm doing the 2nd season. The 1st season comes out with Apple TV Plus.
Gotcha.
I think that's November 1st.
What's that about?
It's fascinating. I think it's going to be a hit too. The
Sounds
first
like
season, well, the series in general is basically asking the question, what would America and the world look like if the Russians had landed on the moon first?
Oh, I feel like I've heard of this.
Yeah, they're starting their whole advertising campaign, and they're putting up the billboards and all that kind of stuff right now. Getting ready for the big launch. We just had the premiere this past Tuesday, I think it was, or Monday.
Gotcha. It sounds like compelling television.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and are you familiar with Ron Moore?
No, I'm not. Who's Ron?
He's the showrunner on our show, but he's done Star Trek, and I believe he was on Babylon 5 as well.
Oh.
And most notably, probably the reboot of Battlestar Galactica.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the sci-fi wizard. And this is born out of his genius, I suppose.
So how do you like it? Does it get gritty or what?
I don't know if I'd say it's gritty. It's definitely very well written and compelling, and I think it covers so many different things. You know, the first season is based in the 1960s, I guess that would be 60s and 70s. Okay. And the first couple of minutes of the first episode is the Russians land on the moon before the Americans can. And essentially the space race gets a bucket of gasoline dumped on it, right, instead of kind of petering out in the late 70s and 80s when we were more interested in the Cold War and Vietnam and everything else. But all that money that we spent on those things instead went to NASA, which accelerates technology and well, I don't want to give stuff away.
Yeah.
But it's pretty fascinating.
That sounds like a tall order. There's so many different facets that could be changed on something like that. Oh yeah. I mean, it deals with gender politics and race and personal family dramas and everything. You know, it's a human story, even though it's sci-fi. Right. Well, that's which is really great. I'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah, November 1st. Go get your Apple TV Plus subscription.
Fantastic. All right, you want to chat about El Camino a bit?
Sure.
You tell me as much as you as you can about your role on that. How it came to be. Whatever comes to mind. because I'm very curious to eat it all up.
Okay, well, I guess I'll start at the beginning. This El Camino was my first supervising art director role. I've been
Gotcha.
art directing, assistant art directing and art directing for the last several years, and I've been in the industry for about 10,
Mm-hmm.
and started as a construction buyer, but we can go over that later if you'd like.
Of course.
But I was working on a movie called Called the Wild, which I think comes out this Christmas or next.
Okay.
I think their schedule got pushed. And I got a call from Judy Ree, who's the production designer.
Mm-hmm.
And she was looking for someone to come art direct for this project that she didn't really give any details about at first, out in New Mexico.
Ooh.
And I usually don't jump from a show, but when you're working as an assistant art director like I was, and then you get an offer for a supervising art director,
Yeah.
you got to go.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So I found out a little bit more, found out it was Breaking Bad, and I was like, oh, well, that seals the deal. I gotta go. And I was a fan of the series, and I thought it was over. I loved the way it ended as well.
Yeah, phenomenal.
With kind of ambiguous, Jesse gets away, and Walter White has passed on, but he's kind of redeemed himself.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a beautiful way to end the series. I thought.
It's tough for series to end well too. Usually, a lot of series can't handle the weight of that, but the brevity of the show is just fantastic.
Oh, it was perfect, and I think they're going for the same duration with Better Call Saul.
Yeah,
which
really.
I think is smart.
Mm-hmm.
They might go one more season than Breaking Bad. We'll see. But I got called about it, and then said that I was interested, and I got a script.
Oh wow!
And read through the script, the early version of the script.
That's crazy. I didn't know how much you had access to. That's wild.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have to.
Right.
If I'm going to help create the world, I have to know what's on the pages.
Absolutely.
So we, and it was funny because at that time it was actually called El Camino, and then later was changed to Greenbrier, which was our code name during production.
Okay.
And we were all curious about what it was actually going to be called, and we were told that El Camino wasn't the title. That was just a placeholder.
Right.
I was like, okay. And but read through it, and it picks up. I'm assuming that you've seen it now.
Yes.
That it's out.
Yes, I have.
And we pick up right the moment that Jesse escapes. Man. And I mean, it's there's so many things to talk about. I'm trying to figure the best path.
I got time, man.
Fair enough. So I got out to New Mexico. I started putting together our team. Judy had already gotten several people, and how she had gotten my name was actually Travis Kerr, who was our set designer at first, and then he ended up becoming an art director for me later on in the season. And I believe he's listed as art director in the credits, as he should be. He did a great job. And Travis and I have worked together in the past, and Judy she's out of New York, and I'm out of LA. And you're usually not too interested in bringing art directors out of New York because they have higher rates than we do in LA.
Right.
So she was trying to find somebody out of LA that could come out to New Mexico. And things have been so busy these last couple of years. It's hard to find people. Mm-hmm. So she was just looking for anybody she could find. We all like to hire people we know because you know how you work with them.
Right. And
it's always risky to go with somebody that you're unfamiliar with. And Judy took that risk with me, which I'm infinitely grateful for. And she brought me out. We hit it off really well. But we're still very much in touch, and hopefully we'll get to work together again soon. She tried to nab me for the project she's on now, but that's in New York, and another union thing. The unions in New York don't like when we invade their territory.
Oh, yeah.
So she ended up having to hire a local guy there, but I'm sure he's wonderful as well. But let's see, we got out there. Travis was on. We found a set designer, Amanda Robinson, young gal, great job. really eager, which was wonderful. We had a couple of PAs and an art department coordinator already lined up because they had worked on the previous series, and I think some of them had worked on Better Call Saul.
Oh, okay.
Alan Chow, our graphic artist, and Billy Ray came on as an assistant art director, which he's an older gentleman, and he's art directed lots of things, so I appreciate him filling that spot for me. He kind of took a reduced role so he could come and help out. And that was wonderful. We had a really great team in our little art department. And the Q Studios there in Albuquerque is where we were based out of, which is just south of the airport, just south of Albuquerque. And nice facilities. Netflix actually just bought them. They bought them while we were working on the show, actually.
Oh, wow.
So Netflix, I would assume, is planning on doing a lot of their series there in Albuquerque, especially if it's freeform. But we got out there. Set decoration team was already in place. There was a lot of pieces already in place before I got on, which made my job a little easier.
Yeah, how much do you have to actually, like, I don't want to say contribute, but, like, is it more like placement and orchestration, or do you actually have to bring to the table lots of, like, original ideas?
So, as far as the movie itself goes, we start with the words on the page. Right. And this was, it was such a great opportunity. We had our first kind of large production meeting with all the department heads, and Vince was there.
Okay,
and, we kind of went over the script and all the ideas and what he was looking to accomplish. And Judy's job is, as the production designer, is to create the world that Vince wants. And, with her influence as the designer into that world. So she reads the script, she talks to Vince, she kind of figures out what she wants to do. And then my job is to actually turn the ideas in her head into reality. Okay. And all the different departments that involve that. The biggest for our department is the construction department that builds all the sets. Right. And we had Bill Holmquist and Terry Kemp, because Bill had to leave us to go to another show about midway through, and Terry took over. Terry, lovely man, did a wonderful job, and our construction and paint crew, Virginia, I'm blanking on her last name, but Virginia Virginia Hopkins was our lead scenic, and that woman does magic.
Yeah? How so?
She can, that whole movie, we were in places, that house that Skinny Pete it lives in, his house, it looks very run down, and it's funny because that house is a nice house in a very nice neighborhood. And we made it look like a not nice house in a not nice neighborhood.
That's very true.
It takes what we call aging.
Okay.
And so on the inside and the out, we actually, the backyard was a very beautiful backyard that we completely destroyed. But we also put it back the way we found it.
What did you have to do to it? So
we covered the whole backyard in burlap, and Chris Kime, our greensman, he was wonderful. He's the most positive person I think I've ever met. And just gung-ho, loves what he does, and loves adding, to the visual elements of the film. And people don't necessarily pay attention to the landscaping, and the point
for sure
is, and I always say the less people talk about the scenery, the better a job we did. Because you want everyone to be involved in the story, and everything else they see on the screen just keeps them there.
Right. You're not even supposed to think about it. Because
if you're paying attention to stuff in the background, you're not engaged.
Right.
And so Chris, when he covered the whole backyard in burlap, and then covered that with a light layer of dirt, so we could make it look like the whole yard was dead.
Gotcha.
And we had to move that. Was it a trampoline? No, it was a pool. We had a pool that we put in, so they could have a reflection shot, which I'm not sure if that even made it to the final cut. They cut a lot to get it down to the 2 hours.
Yeah, I was curious how Vince was going to handle that, because that man loves long episodes.
He does, and he probably could have left everything in, and people would still really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know there's time constraints, and
of course
you can only watch something for so long, and he doesn't want anybody to get bored. And
right,
they cut it together great. The pacing of the whole movie is
top
notch.
I agree. I think the beginning I was like, obviously just kind of trying to feel it out. And it was like a little slow at first just for that reason, because I was like, okay, so what is this kind of going to be? And then it just kind of hit like a really nice rhythm. And it was funny because I just felt that familiar feeling of like the thrilling feeling from watching Breaking Bad, or like just the anticipatory feeling.
Enjoyable anxiety.
Yeah, and it's fantastic because there's so many. He creates this like mood where it's kind of sad, but you also are extremely interested. Like the weekend with Todd and Jesse, like it's not like super fast paced and a bunch of things going on. It's quite slow, and there's a lot of like the shots of Todd singing. But
God, I love that.
the whole like film over the whole thing makes you feel uneasy regardless. So it keeps you on the pace. I just appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, and that was our goal. Well, it was everyone's goal.
Mm-hmm.
I look at filmmaking in you have three categories. Within the filmmaking, there's the director of photography, and the production designer. Mm-hmm. And the DP is in charge of capturing the world in a beautiful way that tells the story. The director is in charge kind of everything, but mainly of telling the story and directing the actors so that they convey the story appropriately. Mm-hmm. And then the production designer is responsible for creating that world to be captured and acted in. And those three legs are kind of the tripod that support a story.
Right.
And I feel like Vince is very interested in every aspect of the filmmaking, which in the art department, we sometimes feel like the redheaded stepchildren.
Yeah.
A funny kind of example of that is, I won't be too specific, but the house, Skinny Pete's house, one of the actors came in and he turned to the location manager and said, "Oh man, you guys found an amazing place. This place is perfect." But this actor has no idea that we spent the previous 5 weeks turning that place into something perfect.
Right.
And then, they learn it and they're very appreciative. Like, Aaron Paul, lovely, lovely guy. Mm-hmm. He's so good to the crew, and
that's awesome, man.
He's genuinely excited to be there and works really hard and goes out of his way to thank people below the line.
That's fantastic.
Which not all actors do that. So that was really nice. And I felt like on El Camino, the scenery was as much a character as any of the actors.
Absolutely, because there's so much space to fill. I don't know, like, that's a really good way of putting it. I've always felt in the show and even in the movie that like the landscapes in the town and the area that they're in feel like an entity that's like also speaking on the whole of the movie.
Yeah, and well, that's a big part of why it's shot in Albuquerque as well. The story, Albuquerque is a character and has been throughout the entire series and this movie. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting place. It was an interesting place to live in for I guess I was there about 6 months.
Wow.
There's a lot of lovely people, but there's also areas of town that are just like the seediest parts of Breaking Bad. I think he does a great job, actually, with the juxtaposition that is Albuquerque of really nice neighborhoods, beautiful scenery when you get out of the city, and the harsh realities of the meth problem that they've had there, and which I think is much better than it was. And but there's interesting things. We had one day we were shooting in an area of town that wasn't necessarily the best part of town, mm-hmm. And a young man was walking down the street dancing with his shirt off, not listening to any music or headphones or anything, just dancing. And he had a gun in his waistband.
Huh.
And which he's totally within his rights to do so, but it was a bit unnerving. And our painters were out there, and they were working on covering up some graffiti, which can be a dangerous thing for us to do, especially if you're in a tough neighborhood and you cover up somebody's tag that they don't want you to cover up. They don't care that you're making a movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, it gets a little dicey.
That's interesting. I'd not thought about like that aspect of it.
Yeah, and production provides security, and we do everything we can to make everything safe.
Right.
But the world is the world. You have to live in it.
That is true.
You put that next to, like, the next day we go over to this historically protected home, which was actually Jesse's parents' house. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the most beautiful parts of Albuquerque. They have these big, beautiful trees and all these old, wonderful houses. Just the architecture is kind of amazing. I did not expect to see that in New Mexico. I was pleasantly surprised. And, we had work to do there as well. So you kind of get the run the gamut of styles within the story. And it's showcased from scene to scene, which is really nice. Mm-hmm. And I think it comes from Vince's appreciation of all that goes into filmmaking, as well as his collaborative nature.
Yeah.
I think he's been the most approachable and collaborative director I've worked with.
Wow. And
it was really nice. I know I'm glowing on Vince, but
well, that's wonderful, man.
I was very impressed by him, which not usually. But I think part of that is kind of going back to the beginning when we had our first meeting, talking about the story and the script and all it was kind of a scene by scene page turn. Mm-hmm. And that last scene of the movie when Jesse is he's getting out of his hiding spot they're in Alaska. He gets out of his hiding spot and gets into his SUV and drives off into the sunset. Mm-hmm. I can't remember exactly how that was originally scripted, but it was I think maybe he was in a hidden compartment underneath the moving van or something, a la Walter White in the what was that? Whatever kind of truck that was that he got out of the bottom of.
Right.
And at that time, I'd only been on maybe a week, and I was still a bit shy about speaking out. But after the meeting, I was telling my designer about an idea, like, well, we could have him up in the mother's attic, which is that part that goes over the cab, mm-hmm. build a false front that can fold down, and that would be easier to do than building a whole box that goes under a vehicle.
Right.
And something maybe a little different. And I think one of the producers was walking by, or it might have been Vince himself, but Vince got pulled into the conversation, and I told him my idea, and he really liked it, and he ended up writing it into the script.
Wow, man, that's crazy.
That's the highlight of the show for me.
That's got to feel like insane.
Yeah.
And you see it come to light and on the screen. That's wild. That's wild.
And it turned out really great.
Yeah, I remember feeling like oh, yeah. Like that was a good Breaking Bad move. So, wow. Good job, man.
Oh, thank you.
That's fantastic.
But that kind of thing, being collaborative, it makes the experience a lot more enjoyable.
Doesn't seem like you could do that with just everyone.
And no, you couldn't. And I'll be a little harsher on him now. during the process, and this is not necessarily Vince's fault, if that's too strong of a word anyway. But mm-hmm. As we develop plans and we'll do renderings. There weren't so many renderings on this show, but we basically present our ideas of what these different spaces will look like.
Right. And
then we have to get them approved, and then the money to create them also has to be approved. And that approval process was very difficult.
Oh yeah.
And I think I understand why. Vince is very particular.
Yeah, that's all I've been thinking is how daunting it must be to have to maintain a style that was like pretty much perfected in one of the most critically acclaimed shows ever for 5 seasons, and to have to like maintain that kind of mood and that kind of aesthetic just sounds like terrifying.
Well, I'm sure it is, especially for everyone. I mean, really, Vince, the producers, the director of photography, everybody. You're coming back to the story after 5 or 6 years. How long ago? It's longer than that, isn't it?
Yeah, 6 years ago it ended.
Yeah. So you have people coming back, a lot of new faces, and people that have never, worked with that crew before, and they do have a kind of a family feel.
Yeah.
Especially with the people closest to Vince, like Melissa and Jen, who was a co-producer, and even his assistant, another Melissa. They all work really well together, and they get along for the most part. Everybody bickers,
right?
But also, all of these different people have an opinion about everything, and Vince takes everybody's opinion in when he's making his final decision.
Right.
And when you're very particular and you're considerate of others' opinions in the process, it can be a little daunting to get the approval that you need in the time frame that you need to get the job done.
Right.
And that is a big, I'd say it's one of the biggest parts of being the art director is time management.
Yeah.
So I had to come up with a budget. I work with the construction coordinator when we create a set list. So it's everything that's dictated in the script.
Okay.
All the places they go, and if there's any kind of description of what that is, we incorporate that into the design, and we create this set list. And we'll have set designers that draw it up, and we may or may not have them designing stuff before the budget is submitted, so we have an idea of the scale of things, because the bigger the scale, the bigger the dollars. But we start that whole process. The construction coordinator and I and Judy, the production designer, will sit down and go through all the numbers, and there's a lot of minutia involved between the division of labor versus materials. It's typically a 70-30 split. But if you do like a higher end, set where you have higher end finishes, or you're doing sci-fi where it's more difficult, your split may be more 60-40,
right?
40% material, 60 labor. Labor is always the heaviest in that process. But after that part, you have to get it approved, and that's a process in and of itself, because you have a lot of mitigating factors with how much the studio thinks they need to spend on the project versus the ideals of the script, which we're going through those budget woes on my project currently, where we have a budget. It's been increased since the first season, but the ambition of the show at this point is extending beyond the financial.
That sounds like an expensive show.
Well, it's sci-fi and period.
Right.
The two most expensive things to make combined. But every show has this, and everybody wants more for less. That's kind of human nature, and it's business. So I get that, and it's the constant creative struggle of trying to make something as amazing as it can possibly be, but for as few dollars as you can manage to spend.
Right.
And it's an expensive process. The labor is expensive. We're compensated well. We work really, really hard and long hours. I was actually just reading an article today about the hours in our industry, and so often, there are 14, 15, 16-hour days, and that's just kind of accepted.
Right. That's tough.
It is. But we also love what we do, so we do it. And working that hard, equates to good compensation. We are compensated nicely, which is good. But I lost my thread there.
I don't know where we were.
So the budgeting process, we get through that, and then the ADs, the assistant directors, come on. They give us a schedule, which takes into account all sorts of factors, from actor availability, which was interesting on Breaking Bad because I think the only actor we had first refusal with was Aaron.
Really?
And yeah, so if you have first refusal, means you can tell them you can't take another project. You have to do ours. We get to tell you when and where to be.
Gotcha.
And to do that, you have to pay more.
Okay.
So they and I could be wrong, but I think Aaron was the only one that was first refusal. So the schedule gets made around all of the other actors' availabilities. And they come up with that, and then they come back to us, and they say, can we have, X, Y, and Z ready by these dates? And then we have to figure out where we start first and what priorities are. That's primarily my job, beyond running the set designers, making sure that we get the drawings out to construction fast enough for construction to build the set, so the set is ready in time when production shows up to shoot it. And anything that can go wrong usually does. You just have to roll with it. I'm trying to think about the El Camino, if there were any issues like that.
I'm curious about the fact that it was shot in such a short period of time, and also like the secrecy of it. Like, I was so amazed at how under wraps. I never felt
like it was that
really?
Secret. I mean, I certainly wasn't broadcasting to anybody. Nobody was saying anything about it because we signed non-disclosures. You're not allowed to do that.
Right.
But everyone in Albuquerque knew we were shooting.
Huh.
We had, I think we told them we were shooting Better Call Saul and this, that, and the other. And,
right.
But word started getting around what we were up to. And
yeah,
I was actually surprised it didn't go further than that.
Yeah, I saw Jesse's car on a production company's, on a Sony truck back in I think it was last year, maybe summer of last year. I saw a photo of his car. And then after that, it was just a Breaking Bad movie's coming out. And I expected to wait years, and then it was so quickly the trailer just dropped, and I was like, "Whoa, okay." And I'm on Reddit consistently, so I consider myself to be I'm not blind to it. I'm usually looking at more inner details, so I was surprised that it just came out so smoothly and so quickly, and I was just elated. So
well, I think that's probably a credit to those at the top, and I don't usually like to glow about the producer class. They're the ones that tell me I can't do things. But they did a really great job of getting this off the ground quickly. And I would say Sony as well. They got the whole thing moving very, very fast.
Yeah.
It was, I'm sure that Vince has been stewing about it for years now. And then finally, either he decided or Sony decided or somebody decided they wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. And as soon as that happened, it was like lightning. And I got started, I think I went out to Albuquerque the day before Labor Day, or day after Labor Day, I mean. Uh-huh. And then I was out of there by February.
Wow.
And
that's quick.
It's not really for most movies. That's
no.
a pretty standard timeline. Mm-hmm. And but what I'm really impressed with is how quickly it got edited and pushed out to market.
Ah, okay.
Typically, that's a much longer process. Mm-hmm. Which I think that's probably because Vince knows exactly what he wants before he even gets to the editing room.
Right.
The most impressive thing I had, I wish every director did this, was we did something that Vince calls Vince's homework. And the art department does up what we call director's plans. And the way we do them for him is a very specific way. We get rid of all the notes and color and anything like that. And it's a floor plan of whatever set that we're doing, or a car if we're shooting in a car, anything like that. And if it's on an 8.5 by 11 page or multiples, we'll give him the overall plan, and he may ask for just a small area to be made bigger.
Right.
But we'll give him all these plans, and then he draws all over them all of the blocking, but which that's not unusual. That's typically what directors do on the director's plans. But he also does all the different shots, the camera lenses, like how he wants the camera to move. I mean, everything is thought out and labeled, shot A, shot B, shot C. And then when you go to work, well, A, you better have read his homework because that's what we're doing today.
Right.
And B, that's what you do. And, it's very well planned. So shooting, I think, was pretty efficient. But then you hit because Vince knows exactly what he wants and he is particular, you may have to do a scene over and over again to get it right.
Give me an example of like a certain scene or day, like what typically what that looked like for you.
Well, I try not to be on set as much as possible.
Right.
It's usually if I'm on set and not on the next set, that means something's going wrong.
Right.
That we have to fix. Mm-hmm. With Skinny Pete's house, the fence, that was an interesting thing because fences don't really come out like they took that fence out. And we also but we had to make it look real,
right?
For one, and two, we had to make it light enough for the actors to pull it out, not just a couple of times, but over and over and over again. So that fence is actually mostly balsa wood.
Huh.
and Skinny Pete he's a skinny guy. It was a heavy fence for him to pick up. It was a heavy fence for anybody to pick up. And they had to do it over and over and over again to get the look right, to make it look the appropriate amount of awkward.
Right.
You didn't want it to look too easy, but you didn't want it to look too hard either, because it has to happen relatively quickly. And, which that reminds me, that's a funny moment that actually got cut from the movie. There's a whole sequence when they remove that fence. They push the car through that side yard, and then it supposedly makes the turn and then goes into the backyard.
Right.
We were always going to cheat that because the way the side yard and the fence, and there was a back building that was kind of a tool shed, the way it was all laid out, you couldn't actually take that car all the way around the house that way.
Right.
But the moment where they're pushing it through the side yard, we put in a little pond, and we dressed it with all these lawn ornamentations, kind of saying, the idea being that Skinny Pete's, this was his mother's house that was left to him.
Okay.
And she was into, decorating her garden. And if you look around through that house, you'll see things that don't make sense for Skinny Pete, but do make sense for his mother's decorating.
Huh.
And that was the idea that we were going for it to look like he had expanded himself within this space that wasn't his to begin with, really.
Right.
But pushing this car back, there was a whole beat or series of beats where there was a lawn gnome that was next to the pond, and they try to kick it out of the way, but it's jammed into the ground. So he kicks it a few times trying to get it, and it won't go. And then he slips into the pond. So we had to make the pond deep enough to be annoying, but also shallow enough to be safe. Which that was a fun thing to figure out, which is a shame that they cut it from the movie. But the car was supposed to crush the gnome, and then there'd be a beat of this crushed gnome laying next to the pond.
Oh, I would have liked that. I can see it.
Well, the gnome became kind of this mascot of the movie while we were making it. And we have these things called car cards that you put in the front windshield of your car so that security and other production members will know that you're with us, essentially. And I don't even think they said Greenbrier on them. They may have said Greenbrier. I think I still have mine somewhere. But we took a picture of the gnome and blew it up, and that was our car card. And I actually I 3D scanned the actual gnome, and then I have a 3D printer, and I 3D printed these little gnomes that we then hand painted in the art department and put keychain rings on and gave them out to the crew.
Wow. That is cute.
Oh, man, that took a while. I was sitting in my little house there in Albuquerque, hand painting these little gnomes, going, why did I say I would do this?
It had to have been worth it, though.
I hope so. I think people enjoyed them. I had to leave the show a week early to go start my next show. And so I actually didn't get to see the trap door in the car. I didn't get to see that happen, which was a bummer. Because they were filming that the last week when I had left. I had to go to Atlanta to start my next project.
Do you know where they filmed the Alaska scenes?
Yeah. It was not Alaska. Where did they? I feel like it was Utah.
Really?
Or, God, I can't remember. I did not go on the Scout. Judy went on that one. But it was just north. Maybe if I look at a map, it'll pop at me.
That's interesting.
I want to say it was the Tetons.
Oh, really?
I think so. Let's see, Oregon, Idaho.
You looking at a map?
Yeah, I'm looking at the states here. I believe it was Utah or Wyoming. Maybe it was Wyoming. Had to be Wyoming.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
I gotta make my way out there.
Look through my notes, but it was definitely not in Alaska.
Yeah.
And they went with a much smaller crew up there, and I think they shot it in a day or so. But the parking lot that plays as Alaska, that's in Albuquerque.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the road that he's driving down when he's leaving that parking lot, and then you have that big hero shot showing the mountains and everything.
Yeah,
that was what they did out of town.
Okay,
and then all the scenes prior to, and that was the only thing they did out of town except for the desert. They went over to Arizona to the Painted Desert.
Oh yeah, I just watched an interview with Aaron talking about that scene.
Oh man, and I didn't get to go to the Painted Desert either because I was stuck trying to get all the other sets done while they were out there.
It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful,
stunning.
He said they helicoptered in.
Yeah, which Vince is a helicopter pilot.
What?
Yeah, he has a helicopter. He flew them out there.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
He's an interesting dude, and nice as can be. I'm from Georgia originally, so I'm a Southern boy, and he's from Virginia, and that may be why I like him so much. I don't know, but that I feel like I haven't watched a whole lot of interviews or anything with him, but I feel like what I've seen of him in the public eye, he's the same way in private.
Yeah, he seems to just be
in work.
A delightful guy.
Yeah, and that kind of, he's not exactly soft-spoken, but he's got a soothing voice. Yeah, it's got that soft Southern drawl, and he doesn't talk loud, but he talks kind of I don't know, just approachable.
That's kind.
Yeah.
So of location, what's because I'm sure you've been around with your job. What's some of your favorite places you visited, states or otherwise?
Oh, that's easy. Hawaii.
You've been to Hawaii? Ooh. For what?
Yeah, I worked on Jurassic World 2.
Oh, that's wonderful.
What was that? The Fallen Kingdom? Yeah, Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah.
We went out I was in Hawaii for 4.5 months on that one.
Oh, wow.
It's an amazing state. It's an amazing place. It's hard to even call it a state. It's its own country, really.
That's incredible, man.
Its own culture and own people that are very proud and most of the time very lovely. You don't want to cross them, though. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
And the Hawaiian people are very proud. You don't want to do anything to make them mad. They will let you know.
Right. I can see that.
And yeah, you have to be aware of that working there too, especially in film. A good locations department is really important.
Yeah.
I think in Hawaii. Well, it's important on every show, but you have to have people because you don't want to disrespect any of the cultures.
Absolutely.
And we had I'm not sure if I think they're called a shaman. I'm not sure if that's the right term. I hope I don't screw that up. But we had our offices and set blessed by the shaman.
Huh.
And she came in and she blessed the whole office and the production as a whole when we started shooting. And I think Dwayne Johnson has every production that he works on, I think, is blessed at the beginning.
Huh.
It's an important part of their culture.
That is very interesting.
And not to mention they're surrounded by beaches and beautiful oceans, and
Right.
Everything's amazing.
How's the food? Like the fruits and...
What's funny, I heard, and I'm not sure if this is true, but it sounds true, that when you go to the grocery store on Hawaii and you buy a pineapple, it's probably came from Mexico.
I have heard those words as well.
Yeah. And it makes sense because they're pineapples. And I did go to the Dole Plantation. It's very touristy, but you have to go at least once.
Uh-huh.
And I got some pineapple there. And that pineapple was amazingly delicious and fresh. So I know why they export it. And the sushi, oh my goodness.
The sushi?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and they say a lot of it comes from Japan, but... I'm not even a seafood person, and having that fresh fish there on the islands I became a much more seafood person than I've ever been before.
Well, that's fantastic.
But yeah, I've traveled around a little bit for work. I've done. I started in Atlanta, so I worked there for many years before I came out to LA, and I've worked in Pittsburgh and Savannah, which is outside of Atlanta, down on the coast. Mississippi, back on the Help.
Okay.
I've done some little work trips to Louisiana a few times. And California, obviously, New Mexico, Hawaii. I feel like I'm forgetting one. Oh, and New York, of course, and New York State.
Well, that sounds fruitful, man.
Oh, it's a fun journey.
You can dive into it if you want to. Let me know how you came to be a supervising art director, how you started in Atlanta, where you went to school, what you wanted to do originally, whatever you feel.
Yeah, so it's funny because when I was a kid and I was really into art, and specifically comic book art. When I was in high school, I had aspirations to become a comic book artist or an illustrator or a colorist. I wanted to get involved in some way, but as it went, and college was on the horizon, and I was the first to go to college in my family. So I didn't have a whole lot of guidance about what to do except for just go. You're going to college. We saved your whole life. Right. Go and do it. And with that, I think, comes some pressure to choose something that's going to make money.
Of course.
And also living in Georgia, I didn't really feel like a creative field was in my future. So I started out, I switched my major a few times, but I landed on biology and psychology. And I ended up with a bachelor's in psychology and a minor in biology. And the idea was I was going to go on to optometry school and become an eye doctor. Okay. And so all of my college courses, I didn't even take an art course. I think the closest thing I took was the history of rock and roll. Wow. And I kind of got out of the creative side of my life during that time. That's crazy. And then I got out of school, and I decided my father was a developer, general contractor. He built homes. He bought land, developed into neighborhoods, built homes, that kind of thing. He did that for most of my life. And this was 2007, so right before the big housing bubble burst. Right. So I thought, hey, I'll go work with Dad, and I'll start my own company, and I'll build some houses, make some money, and then after a year or two, I'll have enough saved up that I could pay for medical school.
Okay, gotcha.
And that being the plan, went to work, and things were going pretty well there for a little bit. I built my own house, which was very exciting. Got moved into that, and then the economy tanked. Right. And I was lucky. I was a lucky one. I didn't have any spec homes that were just sitting there having to pay interest on or anything like that. And actually did some work finishing homes for the Bank of North Georgia that they had foreclosed on other builders. And that was really depressing. to be honest.
Yeah.
Just going into somebody's project and you have to finish it for them because they're no longer there.
That's tough.
And that wasn't all that fun. But, that went along I was making it. I was getting by.
Mm-hmm.
And that was right around the time the tax incentive came to Georgia for film.
Right.
And with the tax incentive, film production began to explode. And my aunt, well, she's actually my cousin, but she's much, much older, so she refers to herself as my aunt. And she was a production coordinator. And I asked her we used to get together every month for family dinners with the extended family on my dad's side. And at one of those dinners, I said, does anybody need any help in that movie stuff that you do?
Mm-hmm.
And she says, well, maybe. Let me see. And she got me an interview with Kelly Richardson, who's an art department coordinator in Atlanta. And I think she's kind of out of the business now. But she brought me in for an interview, and I ended up getting the job as an art department PA.
Wow.
And I did that for 3 days and quit.
Oh, really? Why?
I got offered a building project for a commercial building.
Oh, gotcha.
And it was about 4 times the money.
Yeah, that'll probably...
PAs don't make much. So I told Kelly that I really appreciated it, and I was so sorry, didn't expect this to happen. And,
mm-hmm.
I'm coming from a place of, like, the real world, and I don't think she was bothered by it at all, because I was just a PA. Like,
right.
Okay, PA, well, I'll find a new one of you.
Right.
But, not as callous as that. She's a lovely lady. But we left on good terms, and I went and started the project. And I guess it was about 3 weeks later, she called me again and asked me if I had any interest to meet with their construction coordinator, that he was out of LA and he was going to need somebody that knew local vendors and was familiar with construction and that kind of thing. He needed a buyer. And at the time, I had no idea what a buyer was.
Right.
My knowledge of filmmaking kind of stopped at the people you see getting interviewed on television. The actors, directors, producers, and then there are other people I don't know anything about. But I went in and I met with Steve Hagberg, who I call him my work dad.
Yeah.
I've worked with him several times over the years, and he's retired now. One of my favorite people. He's just so smart and so thoughtful and so good at what he does.
That's wonderful.
It was, and he taught me. Well, the interview was funny because we didn't talk about the job at all. We talked about sailing and motorcycles and mountain climbing and just anything and everything except for what the hell a construction buyer was.
That's how you know you're good.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said that's how you know you're good, if you're just talking about anything else.
Yeah. And at the end, he offered me the job. And I said, well, let me go see if I can get my dad to come out of his semi-retirement and finish this project for me. And my dad agreed. He said, yeah, go try that movie stuff. So it was about the same money as what I was doing. And
gotcha.
I thought, even if I just do this one, film, it'll be something cool.
Yeah, it's a cool experience.
Yeah. And I got in there and I worked really hard, and Steve taught me so much. And that was Killers, which while we were working on was called Five Killers with Ashton Kutcher and Katherine Heigl.
I remember that.
Admittedly, not the best project I've worked on, but Ashton was. Yeah, okay, I had this idea of Ashton as being this kind of arrogant, he's an attractive guy, and he's some big fancy actor. He's not going to be somebody I really want to talk to.
Right.
And but he was given some kind of allowance from the production, basically a ton of spending money, which I'm sure was part of his contract, and he ended up renting out the back half of Six Flags as a wrap party for the entire crew and their families and everything.
Wow.
Which which was kind of funny because, being my first experience, I thought this was every movie.
You're like, oh my gosh, we get Six Flags.
Yeah, this is amazing. And to turn out, I mean, maybe that's the case on every ASHTON project. I don't know, but they are not usually that incredible of the rap parties.
Right.
They're usually fun, but not Six Flags. So my opening experience was pretty great.
That's wonderful.
And then Steve got me on with the construction coordinator there in Atlanta, and I kind of got passed around from project to project for a little bit, and landed with this guy David Nash, who I love David to this day. I actually need to call David and catch up with him. He's a construction coordinator, and over the first, 5 or so years of my career, even when I wasn't working with him, if I was in between shows, he would have me come in for a week or two and fill a gap, and it helped me with the pay, and I'd help him get things organized and that kind of thing. And the construction buyer, for if you don't know, which I would assume nobody knows.
Yeah, I don't know much about that.
Well, it's that position, at least the way that I do the job, is finding and purchasing all the materials to create the film, to create the sets. Okay. So that's everything from buying basic lumber and plywood to trying to source a very strange perforated metal that the designer wants. And of course, the art department, and I'm guilty of it nowadays, of picking things that are an 8-week lead time, but it shoots in 4.
Oh.
And then the construction buyer will go, all right, hold on, let me go see if I can find something kind of like that, but available to us.
Right.
So there's a lot of that in tracking the budgets, which gave me a really good understanding of the amount of money it took to create the scenery, which helped me tremendously when I moved into art directing, because I think understanding the relationship between how many dollars it takes to get how much scenery is key to, especially a supervising art director, and making sure that you're getting the biggest bang for your buck, and you're not wasting money on things that aren't going to be seen as well or at all on screen. And I went through the construction buying for several years, and it was that process of being given things that I couldn't get what they wanted, but I had to go find something. I started thinking art directors didn't know what the hell they were doing, and I could do it better. That was my takeaway. And at that point, I decided I wanted to move into the art department. And with the skills that I had, I didn't know much about the design process. I mean, I'd grown up around building plans and actual construction my entire life, but I wasn't real clear on how that all worked. So to learn that, I went into the art department coordinating position, which is also a position of a lot of logistics. It's keeping track of the budget and making sure everybody gets paid like they're supposed to. And also, it's one of the widest positions in the art department, and I think that it's greatly underappreciated, because the art department coordinator is kind of the person that keeps the train on the tracks in a way, of just the basic things that need to get done, like getting your paperwork into accounting so that your credit card gets refreshed, and making sure that the art directors and production designers do their time cards so they actually get paid, because they're very busy doing other things. And making sure that the drawings that we have drawn get to all of the different departments that are involved, whether it be construction and paint, or set dressing, or special effects, or rigging electric, or whatever department needs that information. You have to make sure it actually gets to them.
Yeah.
And it's a complicated job, and I learned a ton doing it. And I did that, kind of bounced back and forth between art department coordinating and construction buying there for 2-3 years, and was always very vocal about I wanted to be an art director. And I think that's important in any job. When you go in, just not annoying, but
right.
know
what you
know
want.
where you want to be and express that. And I feel like I did a good job of it, and eventually got Jim Truesdale gave me I got to back up a little bit. So I was the art department coordinator on a show called Identity Thief, which the production designer was Shepard Frankel. Supervising art director was Andrew Kahn. And Andrew has become my mentor. He may say he's not. He wouldn't want to take credit, but maybe he wouldn't if you caught him in the right moment. But we've had a really great run, and he's been a source for so much insight and opportunity, which is amazing. And I think it came from Identity Thief was a very difficult show.
Oh yeah.
It shouldn't have been, and there were a lot of factors involved with it, but it was kind of a bonding show for Andrew and I think. And later on, he gave a recommendation for me to another guy, Todd Holland, who is usually listed as a Todd Holland on his credits. And Todd was doing the Fifth Wave, and they needed an assistant art director, and there was no one available, so that opened them up to hiring people off roster. And Todd had gotten told by Andrew that I was great and he should give me a shot. And I was able to get into the Art Directors Guild on the Fifth Wave, which was 5 or 6 years ago now.
Ooh.
And, God, I learned a lot from Todd. I mean, that's one of the greatest things about this industry is every project you get to learn so much.
Right. It seems like such an opportunity.
Oh, yeah. And then I was on there for a short amount of time, and then Jim Truesdale, who I'd worked as his art department coordinator, he gave me a shot as his assistant art director on a project called Banshee, Season 4, up in Pittsburgh. So I was in Pittsburgh for about 6 months, and learned a lot more there. It's the hardest part is getting started into a position, getting someone to take that chance.
Right.
And when someone does, as long as you do well, you will continue getting those opportunities. Mm-hmm. And I think I did well as the assistant art director for Jim, and I went on to assistant art director a bunch of different shows, and several with Andrew. Andrew was my boss on Jurassic, Captain Marvel, Identity Thief. He wasn't my boss on Hunger Games, but he was on that as well. And I can't even remember. I think 1 or 2. He was on Call of the Wild as well. But we've worked together a lot. He's given me a lot of opportunities. And Fast 8. How could I forget that? Mm-hmm. He gave me the introduction to Bill Bretsky, who's a production designer, and Desma Murphy, who is a supervising art director. And they did Fast and Furious 8, or what do they call it? The Fate of the Furious.
Yeah.
And they brought me on that as an assistant art director. And I think Bill Bretsky is probably my favorite production designer to work with for a whole bunch of reasons.
Yeah.
And his supervising art director, Desma, is probably the best person in the world.
Yeah,
it's almost annoying how lovely she is, and everyone that knows her will say that. And it's funny because as an art director, there's a lot of opportunity for conflict.
Yeah, for sure.
We have to work with all the different departments, and whenever you have to work with people and get them to do what you want, but you don't have the authority to tell them to do it, there can be conflict.
Yeah.
Especially if you're telling them something they really don't want to do. But they, that's interesting. Just found concert tickets on my desk. I don't know why.
Oh, you got a show you're going to?
It's Britney Spears, so that's not me.
All right.
Oh, these are from 2015.
Okay.
I think my friend that was staying here, an actress friend of mine, she must have left these.
Well, I hope she had a good time.
You know me. I love the Britney.
I do know you.
But say that Britney Spears distracted me, threw off my whole rhythm.
I'm just fascinated with how quickly it can, like, one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, and then you have a whole huge list of credits. Like, it seems like once the ball gets rolling and you have a decent little, what's the word I'm looking for, reputation, it can just get...
That's the key. This industry it's very big and very small at the same time. And I would imagine a lot of industries are like that. But over the years, you meet more and more people and work on different projects, and we all talk to one another. And if you do a good job, that's the key, is you just got to get in there and bust your ass.
Right.
And if you bust your ass hard enough, people will notice. And then, they'll be on the next show and somebody will say, hey, we need an art director. Do you know anybody? And they go, oh, yeah, I just worked with so-and-so. They were good. You should give them a call. And
I love that. I love that feel of it. And you still seem to be tremendously on the upswing, like with no signs of stopping. So
I hope so.
That's wonderful. What is there? Is there a place you'd like to be, or are you sort of just continuing to be grateful for each opportunity?
Both, I would say. I'm very grateful for every opportunity, especially the one I'm on now. Great crew, and this project couldn't be more up my alley.
Right.
But eventually, I would like to production design as well. And sure, I'd love to be a creative producer, but also, who wouldn't?
Yeah.
But production design seems, to me, that's the goal.
Yeah.
And some people are happy stopping their track at art directing, and don't want to deal with the politics of being a production designer, because a production designer is an above the line person. They're the same as the director, actors, production, or the director of photography, all that. And it is a hard job, and you're responsible for the look of a film.
That's scary.
If a film doesn't do well or doesn't look good, then you have to carry that. And I don't envy Judy in the process we had with El Camino, because it's a hard approval process, and you have the weight of an entire award-winning series on your shoulders.
Yeah, that's a bit much.
It's a lot, and but she did great. And my favorite set in El Camino, I had two favorite sets.
Yeah.
There was the apartment, Todd's apartment.
Oh God, that was wonderful.
Yeah, we built that all on stage on a platform. Any shot inside of that was done on stage, nothing on location.
Oh.
And then we had a location that we matched the outside. But if you look close, and somebody might get mad at me for tattling, but the on the inside of the apartment there are exterior windows in the living room that, if you were paying attention to the geography, which is a little difficult the way it's cut together, but they would be the windows that face out the front.
Yeah.
But you cut to the scene where Todd is pulling his El Camino into the driveway, or pulling out, one of the two, and the camera is kind of at an upward angle looking at the building and his parking spot, and you can see very plainly there are no windows on the outside of the building. But we need windows for light, especially
throw that in
all those scenes.
In the goofs.
Well, here's the thing: Breaking Bad, Walter White's house is nothing like the exterior location.
How so?
The inside of his house is a stage set.
Huh.
And the architecture doesn't matter. It's way bigger. The windows are all different. The doors are all different. It's got, I think, one more bedroom.
Oh, don't
the house.
Don't break the. don't pull the veil away.
Yep. But that's the thing, is you as an audience member, you didn't notice until I told you.
Not at all. No.
And
I had thought that the inside, like, because I had known that most insides of buildings weren't used, like, frequently. But I just know I've read so much on people visiting that house, and like the amount of issues that have come about from people visiting that house, that I just thought it was also the same on the inside. I don't know why. Just hopeful thinking, I suppose.
No, well, they wanted to design the inside of the house to fit the characters, and also they destroy it a few times. So
yeah,
you don't want to do that to somebody's real house.
Right. I was thinking that. I was like, how the what? But yeah. I can't imagine living there now. That
Oh, the couple that lives there.
Yeah.
They've got fences up and everything.
Yeah.
They get harassed all the time.
I've heard that, like, just from what I've read on Reddit and stuff, that sometimes they can be really, really sweet and, like, understanding and totally for, you know, like, photos and stuff. But it just got to the point where people were throwing pizzas on their house and shit, and that's just not okay.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. It was like every week somebody throw a pizza on their house.
That's so messed up.
Yeah, you can only be nice about that so long.
Right.
And we were gonna have a shot, those time lapses that we have.
Yeah.
There are actually way less of those than we shot.
Oh yeah.
Because they did do the one where you know what, I need to watch that time lapse again because I only caught. They have a time lapse showing the shopping center that Saul's office was in.
Yeah, I remember that.
And you can see, and they have the time lapse shot with the what was it called now? Twisters, which was those Pollos Hermanos.
Yeah, the parking lot,
the restaurant. Yeah, and the sign on it that says under new management.
I loved that. I was just like, oh, a little wink.
That was interesting. I sent over one construction guy went over there and popped that sign in, because I don't believe that sign is one of those things that you can slide letters in.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was. We made that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's like a regular light box sign, and we changed it out with the sliding letters to say under new management.
Hmm.
But it's funny because you have to do stuff even for that 3 seconds.
Right, you just gotta make it happen.
Yeah, and we had to have that construction guy had to stay there during the time lapse and then take it all down and put it back together because we didn't want to impact the business.
Right.
Because you impact the business, you start having to pay them, more money, and for that kind of quick thing, you just do what you got to do to get in and get out. Mm-hmm. But we did a time lapse of Ruby and Jesse's apartment that I don't think ended up in the movie.
I don't think so. I don't think that was
the whole Kristen Ritter in the car.
Yeah.
That was added on. I think when we were about midway through.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not sure if that they approached Kristen, or I'm not sure what the story behind that was.
How do you feel about that addition as an audience member, removed from?
Well, removed from where. See, that's the hard thing is I've read the script so many times.
Yeah, I've always wondered what it's like. Like, can you even enjoy it, or?
Oh, I absolutely enjoy it, and it takes me. Every time I watch a movie, it takes me a day or so to digest it.
Right.
And it is much more difficult when you've been so intimately involved. And for me, this was the most involved project I've ever done.
Wow.
Like I was
lucky me.
I felt a part of every single scene.
That's so powerful that you're a piece of that.
Oh, it means the world. I mean, it's why I think most of us do this. That and the paycheck. But the problem comes when you're watching the movie, like that opening scene. It starts on that beautiful New Mexico sky and then pans down.
Yeah.
And it comes to the Rio Grande, and you have Jesse, and then Mike shows up, and I'm watching that, and all I could think was it was so fucking cold. Like, that was the hardest day. I think it was maybe 14 or 19 degrees or something in the morning.
Holy shit.
It was so cold. And I had to be there early because, we have our greensmen there that are making sure that there's not, like, trip hazards out by the water. And, we did a little bit of greens work. We had to clean up the brush so that they'd be able to see the cars from their shot from the river. Mm-hmm. And everybody was freezing. And, man, they did a great job performing in that, because every time they do their a bit of the scene, for whatever shot that we were doing, as soon as they had cut, you had PAs or wardrobe people, I'm not sure who, run out with these big jackets and covering them up.
Oh man!
And they had to have been freezing out there.
Yeah, Jesse's like rocking. I don't think it's for that, but like it makes you think.
It's probably because he was freezing cold.
He's sitting
It
there
works
like
for the scene.
like Aaron, like Jesse's always been kind of like not tweaky, but like a little animated.
Anxious.
Yeah, exactly. So it fits. But now I'm gonna see that scene and think that
They were freezing their asses off. But did you ever watch Veronica Mars?
No, I didn't. I never got around to it.
There is an episode. I never had watched it until just recently, and there's an episode with Aaron Paul in it, and he basically plays Jesse Pinkman.
Huh.
And I'm not positive, but I think that was before he was cast as Jesse Pinkman.
That's interesting.
I keep wondering. I wanted to ask Vince. I forgot when I was at the premiere. I wanted to ask him if he saw that episode and saw Aaron's acting and was like, "That's the kid."
Mm-hmm.
Funny story.
I've watched Aaron's audition tape for Breaking Bad, and it's like just ridiculously good.
I'm sure. The thing about him is he's A, nice to everybody, B, really cares about the story and the character,
mm-hmm.
and C, puts in the work.
Yeah.
The whole the whole apartment scene where they're tearing everything apart, which we built that entire set at the aspect ratio of the camera.
Huh.
So that entire apartment was basically built for that overhead shot with all the Jessies running around.
That was so fucking cool. Like, I don't know how else to say it. That was just such... I was just sitting there thinking, like, how did they pull this shot off? That's so cool.
Well, that's Judy Rhee. That was her idea.
Wow.
And Vince wrote that into the script as well. And man, did it turn out great. We had to build these top plates for all the walls, and,
mm-hmm.
and they were a little bit wider than the walls, so you wouldn't see that edge. Right. Painted in black. So if you've ever seen a floor plan of a house, that's kind of the idea. We created these black lines on the walls.
Mm-hmm.
And then way up in the rafters, I can't remember I feel like the ceiling height in there in that stage was about 70 feet. I could be wrong. That my memory's not holding out on me there. But in the top of the stage, there are catwalks and for all the lighting and rigging and that kind of thing.
Right.
And there was a platform. I think they actually built the little platform off of the catwalk, and they put the camera up there. So the camera's way up in the air.
Right, that's got to be
the set.
tall.
And man, did that turn out cool.
It was such a good shot. I loved it.
I remember when they first went in there we had a pre-destruction look, which is the flashback scenes that take place there. And they shot in there for a couple of weeks. And then they went away, and we also had the Christmas hiatus, and we had to turn it over into the post-police search look.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes into the post-Jesse search look.
Right.
Which, when he went in looking for the post-Jesse's look, Vince walks in and he goes, can we do more? Can it be more messed up?
It's just trashed. It's so trashed.
Yeah. Well, I went in, I think we had our PA down there, we had several painters, and everybody just grabbed whatever they could. Like, the painters and I grabbed different tools, like we call it a 5-in-1. It's a paint tool that it's a blade and a scraper and does all. Anyway, I got one of those, and we just went to town. and most of that destruction happened in about 25 minutes.
Jesus. Well, that sounds like a blast.
It was pretty fun. It was a little stressful because it was,
right.
The camera's waiting and they wanted more. And we've already, we've worked on this thing for weeks and weeks and weeks trying to get it. And like the wallpaper that he pulls off of the wall that's between, I think they had the close-up with him listening and tapping on the wall, and then he pulls wallpaper. Mm-hmm. We had to create, I think it was five walls with that wallpaper. So he could tear it all up, and then they could take the wall away, put in a new wall with fresh wallpaper, and he could do it over again.
Jeez.
Yeah, that was a complicated set, and it was also a little tight for shooting, which we don't like to do, and I'm sure it was difficult on the shooting crew. But we were also contained to our aspect ratio and trying to not get too crazy away from the physical location.
Mm-hmm.
Which we added some windows at the physical location in the interior hall to make it appear the windows would match up between our exterior and interior locations.
Right.
It gets there's a lot of thought that goes into all of these things.
Well, I can't wait to rewatch it now. I watched it this morning again, but
I was going to watch it again last night in preparation for talking to you,
mm-hmm.
and I just got too tired. I got worn out this week trying to get things handled. We have some lunar rovers that we are going to be shooting on Thursday, and there's been some bumps in the road trying to get them ready.
Oh dear!
Different departments, everybody's got to work together, and it's difficult, and it can be very stressful.
So, do you feel fulfilled?
Absolutely.
That's wonderful to hear.
My dad always said, if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life, and that's kind of a cliche, but
absolutely seems to be the truth, though.
It really is, and not to say that I don't have really hard, even bad days where I'm just mad that I'm even there.
Right.
But they are more than made up for with the overall process, and especially at the end when you get to see all of that hard work show up on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think we all do it. It's almost like I like to describe working on a movie is like a really good vacation, because a really good vacation is not relaxing. You go out, you go on this adventure, you see the world in a different way, and you're tired, you're on planes, you're on cars, and you come back and you need a vacation from your vacation.
And you're better.
But you're a better person because of it. You've expanded the way that you see the world. And I think working on movies is a lot like that. The going through it process is not always fun or nice, but
right.
the destination makes the journey that much more sweet, if that makes sense.
Beautifully spoken. Well, thank you so much for the insight, Michael. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem.
I've got a year left.
For hours.
I've got a year left in film school, so
nice.
This is all of it.
What are your aspirations?
Michael, a lot. I want to write books. I want to be in the film industry, which is seemingly difficult the more that I ask those who are in it. But
well, it also depends on what you want to do in the film industry. And I always tell people that are, I get kids that come up and ask me all the time, like, hey, can I have some time? And I try to respond to everybody's emails, and
right,
because it annoys me when people don't respond to mine.
Mm-hmm.
But I give the advice of trying to find that particular thing that you want to do. Be specific.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you ask somebody, if you're going for a job as a PA in the art department, and I ask you, what you want to do, if I hear back, oh, I don't know, I'm just, excited to be in film.
Right.
I'm probably going to go to the next person, not
mm-hmm.
necessarily, but maybe, or probably, to that person who says, oh, I'd like to production design one day.
Right.
And having just that kind of a goal is very helpful.
Absolutely.
So specificity. So if you want to be a writer, even if you get an opportunity to be an office PA, tell me you want to be a writer. And if you do a really good job at whatever you're doing, even as in the starting out, especially starting out,
mm-hmm.
if you're vocal about the thing that you want to do, people will want to help you.
Well, that's wonderful advice to hear.
Yeah, and it's all about building contacts and getting opportunities and seizing opportunities.
Absolutely. I'm in Michigan now, but I plan to head out to California after school and take my swing at things. So I'm still in the muck of figuring out what precisely I'd like to do. I thoroughly enjoy sound editing, probably more than anything else that I've done, and sound design.
Nice.
On sets, but yeah, I'm still figuring some stuff out. And people like you talking to me help me, and I appreciate that dearly.
Oh, no problem at all. It's a pleasure. It's kind of a treat to be asked to talk to somebody on work that I've done. This is definitely a first for me.
Wonderful, man. I hope that you and I's paths cross someday.
Yeah, come on out here to LA. We'll grab a drink.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. I hope you have a good rest of your weekend.
All right, I will, and you do the same.
Thank you much. Take it easy.